Hello, everybody. My name is Angelo Webb, and welcome back to the Multifamily Man Podcast, powered by Total Wealth Academy. And this is just part 2. All right, just a continuation of the last one. If you have not watched the last one about managing properties in D and F areas, go back and check out the first one. This is just a continuation of that. All right. So the sixth tip that I'm going to tell you guys about is about renovating the property. We always talk about doing that up front, because usually when you do it up front, you can get it rolled into your loan when you acquire the property. And so it's easier just to have the capital to get it done, right? Do it up front, right? Do the legwork up front, and then it'll be easier, right? Trying to do it after the fact, or after you own the property for a while, just makes it more difficult, right? So when you get the property, that's when you want to do the improvements. That's when you want to turn it around. But the thing about doing the renovations to the property, and again, some people might disagree with this, some may agree with it, but it is what it is. You want to make the property a few classes or a class and a half above what the area is. Now, I know that kind of goes against a lot of classic teachings about commercial real estate and apartments. They say, hey, it's a D neighborhood. Design it like it's a D neighborhood. Personally, I just disagree. Again, from experience, we've seen that properties in D neighborhoods that you renovate to a C, a C class standard, you have a lot more success. So if it's a war zone, you should when you do your reno, it should be the class of a C. Excuse me. When you reno, if it's in a war zone or an F area, or D area, you should be renovating that to a C, at least. If it's a war zone, a C. And if it's in a D neighborhood, it should be a C plus B minus reno. And again, I know a lot of people think, well, you'll never get it back, or that's going to kill your returns. It won't. And for 2 reasons. Number one, if you give people shit, they treat it like shit. I mean, my dog poops in the backyard, I throw it in the trash. I don't bring it in the house and put it in a picture frame and put it over the fireplace, right? So if you give them crap, that's what they're going to treat the property like that. And people have to understand that. But when you give people something that's nice, something that they can be proud of, something that they're happy to have, they're going to treat it right. And just to think that people don't deserve it because of the socioeconomic background is just ridiculous. You can get it back. Number one, there's 2 ways you're going to get it back, right? You're not going to have the turnover, right? So if all the properties in that sub-market, in this war zone, or this this D area, look like war zone or D properties, and then here you are with the C, it looks like the freaking Taj Mahal, right? Who wants to leave, right? Who wants to take a chance of having to move to something that is a way less standard, way less quality, right? It's not like they can stay in that neighborhood. If they're in the neighborhood, that's because their income and financially, that's what they can afford. So if you have this great property, looks great, ran great, outside and inside, everything's great, people are more likely to not, have lease violations, to pay the rent, to do all those things that they're supposed to do, because they don't want to lose it. Because the alternative is a slumlord, which we strive not to be, which we're determined not to be. We never want to be a slumlord, right? So that's their alternative. They're going to stay here where they have a nice property. Again, like tip 5, where they feel secure. So renovated higher than the sub-market standard is great, and it's a great way to do it. All right. And so tip number 7 is not for everybody, right? Definitely not for everybody. And again, it's not for everybody because it requires more work. If you have if you're using a management company, it's up to them to do that work, and you might be fine with it because it's not you personally doing it. But, a lot of people in the D and F areas are paid weekly, right? And that's a big thing. A lot of them are paid weekly. So charging by the week, again, it is more intensive, right? Because instead of collecting rent 12 times a year, you're collecting rent 52 times a year, right? Because it's every week. But the upside to that is you actually make more money, right? You can actually make more money doing it weekly. So if you have a property that usually rents for $600 a month, let's take that back, Lucas. Let's cut that part out. So if you have a property that usually rents for $600 a month, that's $150 a week. But if you're charging a weekly rate of $175, you're making $700 a month, right? And that significantly can improve, right? Your bottom line, right? And that's something not common, but that's something that you see is just the weekly rate. And not because they treating like it's a motel, but it's because a lot of those individuals in the neighborhood and in those areas get paid weekly. And sometimes things happen, and they look up and, oh, crap, I'm short on the rent. But if they get paid Friday and rent's due Monday, they're going to pay it, right? Excuse me. So that's a possibility. Again, that's not for everybody. For some people they'll enjoy it. And they'll enjoy what the bottom line looks like, right? But for others where it's a lot more intensive work, it may not be, and that's okay. But that's tip number 7. Tip number 8, automate the rent. We got a video on automation that we did a few months ago. And you can actually do it too. Even in those neighborhoods. There's you can use Cozy, COZY. And most property management softwares have this option. What you might run into is some of the residents, again, just because it's common for those properties in those neighborhoods, that some of them may not have bank accounts, right, or savings accounts, because a lot of places you got to have a certain credit score just to open a bank account, right? And they may not have it. So what you can do is recharge with Debit Card. I would just get it for them, right? Or if you're super savvy, get yourself one of those cards where every time you refer somebody, you get $20 or something like that. And you give them to them like, hey, these are the cards, this is a card that you use to pay your rent through here. And you can make $20 every time. That's just me being a hustler. I just thought of that. But, get them a prepaid debit card, just giving them one or having them get one and using that to get their direct deposit and getting that to pay the rent. So again, even if it's an every week thing, it's a little bit easier if the requirement is that they have to do it through those channels, through a debit card or a credit card, because that stops you from having to go physically to get it, and they can just pay it. And then in all this, we do all of this to own our time and to get more freedom, right? So the last thing you want to do is spend more time having to collect the rent when people can pay it automatically with a credit card or a debit card. And then the ninth tip is, this property management is not for everybody. So if you're one of those people that don't like confrontation or awkward situations, you probably need a property manager. For those of us who have no problem, with the industry and what it takes to do and to be successful, this one's for us. Property managers, people that already work for property management companies, they work for them because they have this down and they can do this. But you have to be strict on enforcing the rules, guys. If the tenant is 1 day late for the rent, send a 3-day notice, pay or quit. You can't accept any excuses. You can't give people the benefit. You can't give anybody the benefit of the doubt. You have to treat everybody the same. But this is what you have to do to be successful. Lease violations. They commit crimes on the property, domestic disturbances, all that stuff, man. You gotta pay. You gotta send them, the notice to vacate or notice to quit. And if they continue to do it, get rid of them immediately or as soon as possible. Here in the great state of Texas, it's easy to get rid of. And get rid of sounds so horrible, but it's easy to get rid of residents when they're violating the lease. If they're not paying the rent, they make it a lot easier to evict. It's very quick here. It happens very quick here. Back in Missouri, especially in St. Louis, you file eviction, 45 days later, 60 days later, you're in court. They can file for a jury trial, which gives them another 45 days. The jury says that, yeah, you're evicted. And then the sheriff comes 30 days later, right? So people can get damn near half the year free. They don't play that down here in Texas. Like, you don't pay that rent next month. That stuff going to be on the corner or in a moving truck, one or the other, right? But, you have to be on that stuff though. Just all joking aside, seriously, you have to be on that. You have to get the residents attention right away and let them know, like, hey, this is the tone that we set, and you have to train them and understand that this is what you expect on the property. And if they can't do that, then they can't be there. And if you listen and follow all the other tips, don't worry about them leaving, because you're going to have a wait list as long as the freaking Constitution, right? Because you have the freaking Taj Mahal in this area. Everybody wants to live there. Everybody wants to be there because it's nice. They're sitting there hoping somebody messes up because they know that they might be next on the wait list. So be a stickler about the rules and enforcing the rules, not just giving warnings, not just talking, enforcing them. If people cannot follow the rules, they got to go. If they can't pay rent, you have to file that eviction. You're going to have hundreds of people waiting. So don't be afraid to pull the trigger. And the other thing, actually, this is the 10th tip, last tip. Make sure that you have capital reserves, right? So you should always try and be lean, right? The property, the company, I don't care what kind of business you have, you should always try and run it more on the lean side. And what I mean by that is making sure that you don't have a lot of unnecessary expenses, but like we teach, you set aside 10% for maintenance and repairs. So every month it's 10%. If not more, it could be 15 sometimes, but let's just say 15 to be conservative. So you set that around, every month you put that to the side, right? And that's going to be your operating, that's part of your operating expenses and capital reserves, right? You also putting the CapEx around, aside every month. So later down the line, when things come up, because they do, even if everybody that you ever rented to treated the property like gold, right? And they maintained it themselves properly. They would do their side of it. We maintain it properly. Things break down over time, right? Everything has a shelf life, right? But if you're not putting the money aside, again, this is, I know for some of you this is basic, but there's a lot of people who don't do this, and this is why we buy properties at a cheap price, because they didn't do this. You put that aside, so when it comes up, you have that money there to take care of those issues, right? Because, and really 10%, if you're doing 10%, 10 to 15%, after you do that for 24 months, you can lower it down to 5 to 10%. But then you just keep it there, right? But the reason a lot of slumlords become slumlords is because they run out of money because they have not been prepared, right? Something happens and they don't have the money, right? And they can't get the loan, or they can't get the financing, or they can't get it done for a reasonable price, or the reasonable price is a crappy patch job that doesn't do anything but kick the can down the road, right? Again, we are anti-slumlord. We do not believe in slumlords any way, shape, or fashion. And to avoid even possibility of becoming one, you have to make sure that you have those capital reserves, and you have those, you're taking that repair and maintenance out every month. Even if it's a brand new construction, you should be putting that aside every month. So when it inevitably happens, you have the money there. Okay? So that's the end of part 2 of tips and tricks for managing property in D and F areas. Again, if you guys have any questions about anything that I went over today, I can be reached at angelo@gettotalwealth.com. And thank you for listening to the Multifamily Man Podcast, powered by Total Wealth Academy. Have a good one.